Hey comic book fans, welcome back to Comic Book Corner. That's right guys, welcome back to episode 2 of celebrating 50 years of great old, wonderful, spectacular Spider-Man. That's right guys. Today's episode we're going to be talking about some of Spider-Man's first issues, and then also where I'm going to go with this series so you guys know. One of the things I'm going to incorporate in this series from time to time is I'm going to show issues of my Amazing Spider-Man collection. So every now and then you're going to get facts and things about Spidey, and then maybe an episode you might get a spectacular issue that I've had, maybe issue 115, 116, or any of those issues, and just go through it a little bit just to show you some of my history of Spider-Man as well. Also, guys, when this video goes up, it will be Tuesday night, and the next day will be Wednesday when Superior Spider-Man comes out. So, by a show of hands, well, I guess you can't say hands because I can't see you guys, but by a show of comments below, how many of you guys are going to be getting Superior Spider-Man on Wednesday, January 9th. So I just want to hear a yes or a no in the comments below, and I'm just interested to hear, because based off of the internet sales through Midtown and all the other online comic book places, they're selling out. So Dan Slott obviously did something right. So let me know in those comments below. Alright, so now while we get started, today we all know that Spider-Man, Peter Parker, debuted in Amazing Fantasy issue number 15. It actually talked about his origin and where he came from and things like that. Well, in the debut of Spider-Man in 1963, we had a debut of the Amazing Spider-Man. You can see it here. Hopefully this book's really big. Amazing Spider-Man issue number 1. And in this issue, in the first issues of Spider-Man, actually the first 2 issues of Spider-Man, they had 2 stories that involved Old Webhead. And after the second issue, they went to a longer format. Now, in issue number 1, this issue had to do with a story that had to do with the Daily Bugle and J. Jonah Jameson and his son being an astronaut and rescuing him from the moon and things like that. But the real draw in the issue was the second story that had to do in Amazing Spider-Man issue 1, and that had to do with the confrontation of Amazing Spider-Man and the Fantastic Four. The Fantastic Four were a great family superhero type back in the day, and so it sold a lot of books, and putting those two together, being that Spider-Man was so new and he was an Amazing Fantasy, it sold record numbers. Also, it had to do with Spider-Man's first main enemy, which was the Chameleon, and hopefully I can show you. And here it is right here. It's the Chameleon, and he makes his first appearance. And obviously we all know that the Chameleon is a master of disguise, and he was the first costume criminal to challenge Spider-Man and evolved into from a spy into revenge-seeking supervillain who just kept on coming after Spider-Man, just like Spider-Man's past foes. So when you look at major characters in the Spider-Man history, we see that Chameleon was that first character. Okay, so next, in issue number 2 of Amazing Spider-Man, it came out in May of 1962, and Stan Lee and Ditko focused on Peter's career. So they, focused on him taking the pictures, trying to make money, trying to get rent from Aunt May, doing all that classic stuff that Spider-Man always did. But what happened was, in this issue, we see the first appearance of the Vulture, and we can see that right there. That's where Spider-Man comes in and tries to beat the Vulture. So So he took pictures on this, and you know, he couldn't reveal his, you know, identity, so he took pictures as Spider-Man. And he stopped the Vulture, obviously, and he earned enough money from J. Jonah Jameson, and that was that. And then in the second story, we got to meet the Tinkerer, and he had aliens involved, but it wasn't really described too much of what that one was about, so I guess, you know, not a big deal. And last but not least, and what we'll talk about today, is issue number 3 of Amazing Spider-Man. And this is a big issue because it has to do with everything that's been going on. And when you look at one of the most major players in the Amazing Spider-Man universe, or Spider-Man universe, it had to do with Otto Octavius. And this was the first appearance of Dr. Octopus. So in July of 1962, Otto Octavius was introduced to all of us in the Amazing Spider-Man issue number 3. And basically what it says here, one of Spider-Man's most recognizable foes burst into the scene in an epic tale of the origin of Dr. Octopus. And again, Dr. Octopus started off wearing the harness with the octopus hands on there, and we get to witness what happened to Dr. Octopus, how, you know, how the explosion happened and it got integrated with, you know, his body, and how it connected to his mind, and this started the whole thing from Dr. Octopus. So you can kind of see why Dr. Octopus is one of those major characters that killed Peter. So this was one of those big things, and you gotta love the cover of these classic Spider-Man tales, especially here in the Amazing Spider-Man, because it's just got Stan Lee on it, and it just says, America's most exciting superhero captured by the world's most dreaded supervillain. And it says, a book-length super thriller, Spider-Man faces his most powerful foe, Dr. Octopus. And it says, can anything that live defeat the mighty Dr. Octopus? And Dr. Octopus says here in the little dialogue bubble there, he sits there and he goes, you are helpless, Spider-Man. I warn you that the power of Dr. Octopus is far greater than yours. So that is issue number 3 of the Amazing Spider-Man, and that's basically where we will end today's episode of celebrating 50 years of the Amazing Spider-Man. Great stuff on here, and great history, great facts. If there's something that you guys want me to do that has to deal with Amazing Spider-Man or Web of Spider-Man or whatever, just put it in the comments below and I'll do the research and I'll look it up for you. If there's any questions that you have for me about Spider-Man, I'll answer them as soon as I can. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode of celebrating 50 years of old Webhead. And this is Mike Spider Slayer signing off. And until the next comic book review, guys, I'll see you real soon.